Welcome to Faith and Clarity. I'm Dr. Mark Turman, Executive Director of Denison Forum, and here to be your host for today's conversation, where we try to help you find hope beyond the headlines, and we also want you to find real practical ways to serve in the kingdom of God intentionally so that you can be that salt and light that Jesus talked about, and that you can be a part of what God is doing today to cultivate flourishing communities for everyone. And we're going to have a really great conversation about that today. You know, I love the way the Bible sometimes just makes what seems really complex very, very clear. And hardly any Bible writer does that better than James, sometimes called the New Testament prophet. James 1:27 is probably familiar to many of you, that says, "Pure and undefiled religion before God the Father is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained from the world." If we just tried to live out that one command, I think we would spend the rest of our lives in a really good way. But we want to help you find ways to do that in an even more direct, even technological way, as we introduce you today to a ministry called CarePortal that was called by the Wall Street Journal the Uber of the foster care system. I'm not sure all of what that description means, but we're going to find out. My conversation partner today is the founder of CarePortal. He is Adrien Lewis. Adrien began his career in business, working as a professional in business development and also in healthcare, technology, and some in education. In 2007, he did what probably many of you listening to this have done, which is he went on a mission trip. And that mission trip became pivotal in his life, changed his perspective, and really deepened his calling in a profound way that we're going to get him to talk about a little bit. Over the next 3 years, he got more and more involved, taking care of and looking after vulnerable children. And then in 2010, 15 years ago, he felt a clear call from God to step out of the business world and to dedicate himself to helping orphaned and abandoned children. That led him to use his background and skills to found what we are talking about today as CarePortal, a care-sharing technology that mobilizes people to help people who are in need and to help them connect in a way that's dignified and respectful and honorable, and also in many ways transformative. So that's where we're headed today, and we want to thank you for being a part of the conversation. Adrien, thank you for taking time to be with us today.
I'm so grateful for the invitation, Mark. I'm glad to be here, sir.
Well, looking forward to where this goes and to deepening my own understanding about how CarePortal works. I will admit to you, I've played around on the website. I've become a participant and am learning just how this whole system works. And I hope our audience will grab hold of it by the time we get to the end. But tell us a little bit about the Adrien story that is the background, a little bit about your faith and about this mission trip that kind of became pivotal for you.
Yeah, well, I love talking about my faith journey, and I love hearing about people's faith journey. It's such an important part of their overall story, where God meets you, when he meets you, how he meets you. I don't want to lose sight of it, because it's a driver. For me, I didn't grow up in the church. My parents split up when I was really young. My mother is an immigrant from Armenia. And, off and on, we went to the Armenian church, but, they spoke Armenian and I didn't speak Armenian, and that's kind of hard, right? So, when I was with my dad, they went to a kind of Baptist type of church, on and off. And I can say that I remember being in an environment where I didn't understand what was going on. And that was the gist of it. I didn't actually become a believer until I was 27. And how that worked is I went to church with my wife for some years, and I played by the rules, and I said all the things, but I had no concept of needing a savior. In fact, I would say in the men in my family in particular, the pride gene is really strong, like superhuman, right? Not superhuman in a hero kind of way.
Right.
And the Bible is very clear, God opposes the proud and he gives grace to the humble. And so I'm 27, my first daughter is born. And when she was born, Mark, I remember having two very specific thoughts.
Mm.
The first one was, compared to her, this pure little girl, I am a schmuck. Like I am so bad.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that I'd, through all of my pride, thought of myself in that way.
Mm.
I'm not happy to say the words I'm saying, but it's true. It was the way it was. I compared myself to other men in particular and found myself superior in my own mind. And that was my pass, you know?
Yeah.
And the second thing is that she was like a miracle. I mean, the human life, for anybody who has children, creating a human life is like, what? What is happening? You know, how does this happen? I can't do this in my own strength. And I say all that just to provide the context that where God met me there was in a bit of humility to realize I am not as good as I think I am, and I can't do all the things I thought I could. Like, I don't have that power. And 6 months of pursuing the Lord, I found myself asking and seeking and knocking for real. And when you do that for real, God promises to meet you. And he did. He showed up. One day I surrendered my life to the Lord, recognizing that this Jesus I've been hearing about for some years now, he's actually for me. I personally, Adrien Lewis, need a savior. And that was pivotal. And in that time, soon after I got baptized, and the Lord gave me a gift in that moment that was a supernatural encounter in a way. And I would say I've had the favor of supernatural encounters ever since that have shaped my life and the directions I have gone with this or that equal lead to who you're talking to today.
Wow. Just love hearing that, and how just clear and transparent and honest that is. Wow. Just love that. So you end up on a mission trip, 2007. Tell us a little bit about that trip.
Yeah, brother. 2007, I go on this mission trip, first one ever for me.
Yep.
I got invited kind of at lunch one day by a guy I went to church with, and so my wife and I got to go. And the purpose of the trip was to go to Haiti to hang out with kids and their caregivers, kids who had no family, kids who lived in an orphanage, quote unquote,
right?
And love on them. And catch a vision for what God was doing in this country and through the work of this ministry. The ministry is called the Global Orphan Project. And so we go on this trip, and we're probably day 2 or 3, and we're on this field, Mark. And in the field, like, it was this weird contrast between this brokenness, like this abject poverty. I mean, kids walking literally hours to get to school from all over that area to get to the school that's in this field, and it was just destitute in so many ways. And then there was this beauty. I mean, it's like more of a valley, and there's mountains around, and the sun is shining, and it's like, and the people are kind and resilient and humble and grateful, and all the things that we appreciate in people. I mean, so these two things are happening at the same time, and we're walking on this field. My wife and I are holding hands, and this is one of those moments, these supernatural moments. I don't know. I don't know why God sometimes does what he does, but on that field, I just experienced his presence in a powerful way, so powerful that I would say I went from being a believer to being a follower on that field on that day.
Yeah.
And he gave me a purpose. Like, in the following, he gave me a purpose specific to the transformation that can happen in people's lives when they follow. It's happening to me, and what it means to pursue caring for orphans in a God-sized way. And that launched a whole path for my wife and I. I mean, she ended up quitting her job and becoming a stay-home mom, and we ended up giving to this ministry and becoming leaders and trip leaders and all the things. And then 3 years later, I got an invitation to leave my company and to join them. And, I was climbing the corporate ladder, man. I was doing the things. I was making the money. I had the all the things, all the trappings. Not that the corporate world is evil. It's not my point, but my pursuit was in the things that would most people feel like have the highest value. But God had planted this seed of purpose that, you follow me and you do things that are radical when I ask you to do them. And leaving my comfortable job to go into full-time ministry was one of the things that he asked me to do.
Wow. And just, and some people could hear that and not hear the eternal nuance of going from believer to follower. And all that is involved in that, and all the sense of calling and sense of intimacy as well as purpose, the oneness that God brings in the middle of that, which starts to then form up, from what I understand, a real focus for you and for your wife into the foster care realities here in our own country, which has really been intriguing to me the last couple of years. I have a friend and fellow minister here in my area who just bumped into a person that was aging out of the foster care system in our state, and showed up on his door with, they gave him, a suitcase and a couple $100 and said, good luck. And he's turned that into a whole ministry of helping, older teens and young adults get on their feet, get education, get housing, that kind of thing. So that's kind of been an upfront confrontation with that end of the foster care system. I suspect many listening to us probably saw the movie a couple of years ago, Sound of Hope, which is about the Possum Trot community that you and I were talking about offline. But on the CarePortal website that we're going to point people to several times today, there's a statement that that America has a hidden foster care problem. What do you mean by hidden problem when it comes to foster care?
Yeah, it's a great question, and if it's okay, Mark, I'll go back to what the Lord did to even wake us up.
Sure,
right?
Absolutely.
Because back 2010, I didn't even hardly know what the foster care system was, and I imagine for many Americans, people listening, all they know about foster care is, well, that's where kids go when they can't be with their family. There's a general concept of that, but it's not a oh my goodness, what does this mean in my neighborhood? Right? There's a gap of that in some ways, and it was for us. In fact, I will even go so far and say I had this misconception, and my misconception was that kids who were in the foster care system were bad kids, and they had parents who didn't care about them. And that's just not true. But it's what I thought.
No.
And so my wife and I, had very little exposure. I go on this trip to not Haiti. This was in Uganda, Lira, Uganda. And I'm at a pastor's house, or behind the house, and he's got this circle hut, this round hut, thatched thing, and they do meetings in there, and they have tea in there, and it's like their communal place. And we're in there, and we're just talking. I'm working for the Global Orphan Project at that point in time, and I had another one of those moments, those supernatural moments where I just heard from the Lord, and the sentence I heard was, "Take the foster care class." Like, that's it. That was the sentence. And it was so out of place. Like, I'm in Lira, Uganda. What? There's no foster care system in Uganda. We're not talking about that, And I text my wife. I'm like, I think I just heard from the Lord, which is a weird thing to do. I'm in Uganda. And So I get home and we pray, we talk, we pray, we talk, and the Lord confirms that, this was from him. And so we start taking the foster care class and we learn about this thing that's hidden. Like we learn the stories.
Did you even know what the foster care class was when you heard this in Africa?
No, I didn't. I'd never even
didn't even know there was a class, right?
Yeah, it's like, what is this? Like, take the foster care class. Oh, okay, well, yeah. So we're in this class, and it's the second class. And in this class, I'm learning about the kids who live down the street from me. Okay? Like, we can't miss this. Like, it's so good for us to go to the ends of the earth to do the work of the Lord. And we can't skip over the kids in our own zip code.
Right.
We just can't. Like, that's not part of the plan. And most people do. The foster care system is in your zip code. These children are in your zip code. It's hidden because it's right there and you don't know it.
Yep.
And I had my heart broken for the kids in my zip code. And the Lord led us to become adoptive parents. We fostered to adopt, and we had different sets of kids coming and going in our home before the last three of my 6 kids we've adopted now, Jacob, Jalen, and Isaac. And while we're going through that process, the founder of the Global Orphan Project is on a trip to the Philippines. And on the way home from that trip, what he hears from the Lord is to stop flying over the kids in your own backyard. And so here we are. I'm following this personal path of becoming a foster and adoptive parent. The founder of our organization is now saying, this is what the Lord has for us. And so I just fall into leadership of this new initiative. What does it look like to help the church in our country care for the most vulnerable in our country? And that is in and around the foster care system.
Yeah. Wow. So 6 kids total, right?
Yeah.
So tell us the age range of who you're parenting now. From what age to what age?
Parenting. Wow. Well, no matter how old they get, you're still their parent.
That's
right?
true. Yes, yeah. I can vouch for that.
Yeah. So we go from 37 with 2 grandkids, all the way down to 12, which is a huge span. It's crazy to have, young kids in my home and have a 7-year-old grandson at the same time. They're like brothers more so than uncle and nephew. Yeah. But we have Andrew and Kelly Jean are married, and then we have Adora, Malachi, Jacob, Jalen, Isaac.
Yeah. Let me. Just it sounds like the crazy big family I grew up in. To be honest with you, I have nieces and nephews that are closer to my age, and almost like additional siblings. So I totally get that. Talk a little bit more about some of these misconceptions about foster care, because I can hear somebody listening to us and they're sitting there going, well, that's what the state does when families are broken and they're not working and the kids need a safe place to go. And it may be that the kids aren't bad. Maybe sometimes they are, but maybe it's the parents that are bad. And the kids end up being the victims. And that's certainly true at a certain level. But come back around to tell us a little bit more about some of those other misconceptions that maybe got cleaned up over the last number of years as you got more and more involved in how this looks in your own zip code, around your own neighborhood, over 3 doors down or 3 blocks over. What else have you kind of seen that's kind of informed and stood out to you?
Yeah, there are a couple of big rocks here, Mark. One of them is that there is abuse. Children are harmed. There are cases where you absolutely need to remove a child because the parent is harming the child in one way or another. No question about it. We need to keep doing that. Yep. And in fact, the 3 boys that we adopted, there was harm being done, right? So I just calm that out. And when you look at the numbers, there's like 7 million children hotlined every year. That means a doctor or a nurse or a neighbor or a teacher, somebody called the child welfare hotline and said, I think there's a problem, right? And many of those cases get closed, like they don't go through, but millions stay open. And when you think about the millions that are open, most of them, 76% actually, have to do with neglect, not abuse. In fact, the kids in foster care, 76% are there because of neglect, not because of abuse.
Okay,
and
let me get you to clarify that, because somebody's sitting there going, okay, I thought neglect was abuse.
Yeah.
Can you kind of tease that out a little bit? What do you mean the difference between neglect and abuse?
Yeah. Well, let me give you some concrete examples, right? So if a parent is physically beating their child, that is a clear case of abuse, right? If a parent is intentionally not feeding their child, that is a clear case of abuse.
Okay.
And if a neighbor sees that happening and calls the hotline, or a nurse or a doctor or a teacher, they're going to do an investigation, and that's going to be found as abuse.
Yeah.
If a parent, let's say Johnny goes to school for 3 days and he's wearing the same clothes, or he smells bad, right? And the teacher's like, Johnny's been wearing the same clothes for 3 days, and I'm going to do a hotline call. Well, that's not a horrible thing in itself. But what they find is Johnny's mom actually is trying to do the best she can for Johnny, and she's working double shifts, and her car broke down, and now she's got to take the bus in order to get to where she's going. And the last thing on her mind is whether Johnny took a shower or changed his clothes. That's the last thing on her mind. Now, does she have issues that are going on? Yes. Does she need help? You bet. But is she doing something to harm her child? No. This is a poverty and circumstance related neglect, right? And maybe even sometimes there's substance abuse in the case. That does happen. And when that happens, does that mean that mom is bad? I mean, I know a lot of people who have a lot of resources who have substance abuse issues, and they're able to hide it way differently than a parent who's in poverty. Yeah. And so you have these compounding factors where it's really poverty's at the core of why the child's not getting the things that they need that would be best for them to have. And it has not so much to do with, does my parent love me and are they trying, right? And so neglect is not the same as abuse.
Yeah. And let's see if we could put those stories that you're just describing and put that in the context of actual communities. Because while you're talking, I'm thinking about just some of the stories in my own community. I live in a pretty affluent, white-collar environment. My zip code is just one of those zip codes in the North Dallas area. And there are communities like mine and very different from mine all over the world, all over the country. But as you said, it doesn't matter where you live in the United States, foster care needs and families living literally on the edge of survival when it comes to food, when it comes to clothes, when it comes to proper shelter, when it comes to basic health care, they are right around us. And the houses at times may look exactly the same. But even if it's not around the corner from you, it's less than 3 miles from you.
That's right.
Help us understand what that looks like in every community.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you the numbers are there. Like if you're interested in seeing the number of children who are in the foster care system, right now there's 350,000 or so at any given moment. We can look into your specific county and see those numbers, and there's probably 10x of that. Whatever the number is, there's 10x of that are on the brink, right? So like in Kansas City where I live, there's at any point in time roughly 1,500 or 2,000 kids in the foster care system. So you're talking 15 to 20,000 kids who are on the brink. Like they're on the edge. And then their families. There's always families involved. There are places in the country where the numbers are much smaller, right? Maybe in your particular county, in your particular zip code, it's lower, but they're there. And to your point, if you just looked a few miles away, like you know where the tracks are, like you know where the housing is that's not quite as good as your housing. It isn't a stretch of the imagination to say there are children in that neighborhood who are either being cared for by a kin, like a grandparent or something like that, on the brink of being in foster care, or maybe trying to get back to their family who lived there because they're already in foster care. No one in our nation is absolved from the most vulnerable, like James 1:27, to care for the orphan and widow in distress. No one in our country is absolved from thinking there is an orphan near me.
I just tell you one quick story. I had the opportunity over a number of years to volunteer in one of our schools here in my town. And the way this really came home to me, Adrien, was we were coming up to a school holiday, and I was talking to this young man, 8 or 9 years old, that I was getting to mentor in the context of the school and part of his day. We would eat lunch together once a week, that type of thing. And I was asking him what he was going to be doing for the week of the school break. And he didn't really want to have the conversation. And then I kind of found out, talking to him and talking to his teacher, that because of his situation, he was in a family that was living on the edge of poverty. And he didn't like when the school had a break. He didn't like when there was a vacation time. He didn't look forward to summer because the school represented the safest, most stable environment in his world. And so that was completely opposite, because I didn't grow up in that kind of a way. I couldn't wait till school was out,
Right.
But for him, it was completely flipped over because he was living on the edge of poverty. And if certain things had happened, he could have become a foster child within a matter of 2 or 3 steps.
That's right.
Yeah. And go.
Yeah. I mean, you're throwing strikes here, because in my life, I have so many layers of support. I mean, if I just started making really bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, it would take a long time before my family would be in a position where we could be on the street, because there's just so many people around us who could be helpful. Isolation for people who are in poverty or close to it is significant. There is nowhere to turn. And when the tire blows out on your car and you miss 3 days of work, that could be a life-changing event.
Yeah.
It's like that, Mark. Like, it's like that. And in our country, 28 million children live at 200% or below the federal poverty line. Wow. And when we think about like that statistic, there are a lot of those kids who are okay. Like, they're going to be fine. But a lot of those kids are the kids that we're talking about.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've done a pretty good job of kind of presenting the need. Yeah. And we're going to come back in just a moment after a break and talk about what God seems to be raising up as a really big part of the answer, which is what CarePortal is. So, Adrien, I'm going to tip you off. I need your elevator speech when we come back in just a second, so we can get the answer, the solution to this rolling around CarePortal. We'll be right back in just a second, and we'll pick it up in just a moment. When a conversation about faith comes your way, will you be ready? It might happen at work, in a casual chat with a neighbor, or when a friend shares what they believe. In that moment, you don't get to choose the topic, but you can be ready with the truth. That's why Dr. Jim Dennison wrote Biblical Insight to Tough Questions, Volume 8. This book explains 9 major world religions and alternative belief systems like Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Mormonism, and more. You'll learn how each compares with Christianity and how you can engage clearly, lovingly, and biblically with those who follow them. we'll send you a copy of Biblical Insight to Tough Questions, Volume 8, to say thanks for your donation to help keep this Faith and Clarity podcast going strong and empowering you and others to engage culture with clarity, compassion, and conviction. So please act today. Visit supportdenisonforum.org to help more believers think clearly, live faithfully, and follow Jesus with courage. That's supportdenisonforum.org. All right, we're back talking with Adrien Lewis about CarePortal and how it addresses the needs of people that are either in the foster care system, on the verge of the foster care system, or in other situations as well. How do we help people who need help find help from a whole lot of people like those listening to this podcast, perhaps, that want to help, but they're trying to find the really best, most effective, most useful ways of doing that. And Adrien and his team have come up with a really unique and powerful, technological, scalable solution called CarePortal. So if we stepped on the elevator with you sometime, Adrien, and we said, what in the world is CarePortal? What would you tell us?
You just did such a great job, Dennis. You just did. I mean, if I was to simplify it to a couple of sentences, it's like, CarePortal is care sharing technology. Like, it connects people who have real needs in real time with people who want to help. And it's like the Uber of care, right? If you want two sentences, that's it right there.
Yeah. So talk about, I love how CarePortal is positioned around helping identify children who are in family systems that need help, and then connecting people that are called of God and motivated by their faith to want to help. Talk about how children that we've been describing in the first part of our podcast, that children are kind of the common bridge in all that you're trying to do.
Yeah, it's great. So for clarity, the Bible's super clear for us to say we should love our neighbor as we love ourselves. It's not limited to children. Even the verse that you talked about, James 1:27, is pure and undefiled religion to care for orphans and widows and their distress. Right. So what we're really saying is, the Bible's really saying is, like, the most vulnerable among you, care for them. And we have a particular call to focus on the most vulnerable of the vulnerable, and that is always going to be a child. Always going to be a child, right?
Yep.
A child can't take care of themselves without an adult, of somebody helping them. So they are the most vulnerable. That's why they are the bullseye for us. And the foster care system in our country is that manifestation of that bullseye. That's where the most vulnerable are. But it's not the but for, right? The but for is broader. It's really about, how do we mobilize the church, those who say they love Jesus, to show up to see and serve their neighbors? How do we do that? And CarePortal is a mechanism to help make that happen in a vetted, trusted, reliable, scalable, all the words that you use, in all of those ways. And so if we do a good job of focusing around the child, we'll still get the others, but we won't miss the most vulnerable.
Yeah, and that's just such a really ingenious thought as far as driving the mission. And I wish we could say that everybody loves children. Unfortunately, we know that that's not true. But most people love children, regardless of what your faith background may or may not be. Most people would agree with that and start with that. And like I said, if you start with the most vulnerable, you'll catch a lot of the others as well, including their parents and possibly even more layers of their family. Walk us through how CarePortal works. If I'm an individual and I go to careportal.org, there's some great, real clear, simple pathways that you can learn on the website. But walk us through it for a minute. How does CarePortal work for an individual who wants to help or for a church that might want to be involved?
Mm-hmm. So we think of CarePortal as a multi-sided market. And for some people that don't know what those words mean, but you know what it is, right? You know what Uber is. It connects riders and drivers, right? You know what Airbnb is. It connects somebody who's got an empty home with somebody who wants to rent a home. You use Facebook Marketplace and Zillow, et cetera, et cetera. CarePortal is not unique in what it is. It is unique in the space that it's in, right? We are the first care sharing multi-sided market platform that now has scale in states all over the country. And we think about what are we doing? Well, we're taking caseworkers, whether they're part of a school or a child welfare agency or a homeless shelter or a pregnancy center. Those caseworkers, they're on the front lines with families who have these real needs. They're in their homes. They're getting the phone calls. And it's their job to try to help them improve their well-being. And so we partner with those organizations. We call them agencies. And those agencies have these caseworkers who literally download the CarePortal app, or they go to the CarePortal website and their agency gets all signed up and the caseworkers got access. And now they're submitting the needs on behalf of these families. And then on the other side of the marketplace, we have responders. So you've got submitters and responders. And the responders could be a business, could be an individual, could be a Rotary Club. It could be anybody who sees the needs on our app or the website, and they say, I am interested in helping to pay for that bed or that crib or that home repair so that the grandma can keep the grandkids from going into the foster care system. The needs are always very specific to a particular child and family and exactly what they need and what difference meeting that need would make in their life. Might this help keep a child out of foster care? Or might meeting this need help reunify a family? Or might it help a kid get back to school? The purpose is always very specific, which is so powerful for people who want to respond because one, they want to know that they're helping someone, right? And they want to know that that need is valid. And so when we have caseworkers submitting the needs on behalf of families, we are validating that that need is real. So important. And then when we have the visibility and transparency of the actual story of that family, you know that the zip code that they live in, you don't know their personal information, but you know their zip code that they live in. You know how many kids we're talking about and what we're trying to accomplish. So powerful for a responder who's like, I'll give $100 towards that, right? And then you have churches. And in our mindset, the local church is always at the point of care. And what I mean by that is when someone shows up to the grandma's house and brings the bed for that grandchild she's caring for now, that she didn't expect to care for. When somebody shows up with that bed, they are showing up as part of a local body of Christ of some sort who sees the opportunity to not just bring the bed, but to actually make a meaningful connection that leaves a lasting impact on that family's life, right? We know as the body of Christ that feeding somebody is fantastic. But when you can engage in a relational experience with them, it's a multiplying factor, right? Like that's 10xing of meeting the tangible need itself. And so our little conspiracy here, Mark, our conspiracy is that we are trying to position the local church to make meaningful connections at scale. How do we get neighbors to see and serve their most vulnerable neighbors?
Yeah. And it just jumped into my brain, so I have to ask you to do this. That you talk about how you are lowering the wall for people who want to help, turning that wall into a step that they can describe that metaphor for me.
Yeah, I mean, when God gave us the vision for CarePortal, it was very simple, and it's what I've just described in a fewer words. But ultimately, when people think about the foster care system or caring for their neighbor, they're thinking it's like such a high barrier, 6-foot wall, right? I
Yeah.
can't. I can't possibly. I don't even know what I would do next. That's so hard to get there. And as a foster parent, it's a 6-foot wall. It's really hard to get through the process and the class and all the things.
Yeah.
But if a person just knew, man, in my zip code, there's this grandma who just took in her grandkids and she needs 2 beds for them in order to keep those grandkids to be safe and by the state standards. I could provide for one of those beds or 2 of those. I could do that. That's like a 6-inch step. And our belief is that when you make people aware of those real needs and they can trust it, that they'll do it. And that actually is proven true.
Yeah. And it's just such a great way of thinking about it, because we see a problem and we get overwhelmed with the magnitude of the problem, even helping one family to achieve stability. And we think, well, it's just too big of a thing. It's too big of a reach. And we don't realize what you just said about yourself. Whether if it was you or me if we went off the rails and we started making stupid decisions and going crazy, we have multiple layers of people who would get involved and come after us. Many of these people in these families that we're talking about, they don't have those layers, but CarePortal can provide some of those layers in that bring the wall down and bring a sustainable environment to these people who are living on the edge and just need oftentimes a little bit of a help through a pothole that they've landed in. Like you said, they walked out and the tire was flat and they can't get to work, or the battery was dead and they can't get to work.
Right.
And that cascades into all kinds of additional problems that just become insurmountable for them.
That's right.
They feel like the whole world is rigged against them at some point.
How cool is it that a moment of help can turn into like a movement of hope? How cool is it when the church is positioned to be at the point of care for their neighbors over and over and over again? And we show up with dignity, not with a savior complex, not with I'm better than you in any kind of way. We show up and we're like, you're in a moment of need. And I've been given something that I can give away. My time, my talent, my treasure, whatever. That's what it means to be a follower of Jesus.
Yeah.
We do that 100,000 times. We do that 1,000,000 times. That changes culture, Mark.
Yeah. And what a tool, the other thing I was thinking about, just what a tool this is for that school teacher, for that school counselor who, depending on what kind of school you're working in, you see these needs all the time.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, what can I do? What resources do I have? A lot of times teachers pull it out of their own pocket, right?
That's right.
And they'll provide clothing or food or whatever the case might be, school supplies. They'll oftentimes go out of their own pocket. Most of the teachers I've ever met have been generous that way. But CarePortal gives them another tool so that we don't finally get to the last resort, which is the state's foster care system, right?
That's right.
And that's just part of the magic of this. So talk about some of the options that I want you to get to, maybe another transformative story, but a person can participate as a helper at whatever level. They can give financially and not meet the people that are receiving it, all the way up to possibly forming a relationship, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So businesses or individuals, they mostly give financially. They see a need in the platform, they're inspired by it, they make a contribution towards helping to meet that specific need, right? And then there are the churches who we train. We train their response teams. And sometimes their response teams are small groups or men's ministries or women's ministries or whatever. And sometimes they have the resources themselves. And so they just go do it. But sometimes when a business or somebody says, oh, I'm going to fund part of that, we actually have a fintech, to get a little geeky. We have some technology that transfers that money through our platform onto a reloadable debit card that we give each of the churches. And so we actually empower churches as close to the families as possible to get the resources they need to go make the connection with the family. And so anybody, like literally anyone can participate at the smallest level of making a financial contribution and at the biggest level of taking those contributions and engaging families directly.
Mm. And there's, from what I understand, a high percentage of the families that need help who get onto the to the platform. If you ask them, and it's always a request, do you want to meet the people that are helping you?
Yeah.
Most of them are open to that, right?
Absolutely. We do ask, the caseworkers are the ones who ask that question, right? They ask the family, are you okay, connecting with somebody in the community who wants to help? And the vast majority of the time they say yes to that. Occasionally they don't, and we respect that. If I mean, listen, if I'm in a precarious position, I might not want a stranger showing up at my house. Like I can understand that. And fascinatingly enough, most of the time they say yes. And I think the truth is they know they need community. They know that they need a connection. And what we believe is that connection changes everything. That's actually the thing that makes a difference.
Yeah, it does. It really does. So do you date the launch of CarePortal at 2015? And where did you start, and what has growth been looking like the last number of years?
So we do date the official launch as March of 2015. Okay. We did a pilot in Austin, Texas in late 2014 and learned some things. We had relationships there in Texas that helped us smooth the way over. Bishop Aaron Blake was one of the key people that helped to envision this with us and helped the state of Texas to adopt it and actually help us to create the infrastructure for caseworkers. And then we moved to a couple other markets in Texas and in Kansas City as of March of 15. So we're like 10 and a half years in now. And I can tell you, Mark, God has been gracious. I do have a lot more gray hair than I had 10 years ago. I'll tell you that.
It has been work, right?
It has been work. And he has been so gracious. His favor is here. We're now in 39 states.
Wow.
And have served 550,000 people or so through the local church. And it's crazy. 150,000 of them has been just in the last year.
Wow.
So when you talk about scale, we grew slow in some ways. And then the last few years, things are just really ramping up. We have a vision that by 2029, that we would be serving 1 million people a year through the local church, making these meaningful connections. And that's a lot of growth from here to there. I mean, just do the math where it's a multiple by far.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's super exciting. And, like I said, God has been laying the foundation for that. I can hear some people going, this is just amazing. But somebody in probably the business world is going, how does this work financially? How is CarePortal funded? Yeah. What keeps the lights on for all the technology?
I wish it was cheap, Mark. I really wish it was cheap. It's not. And so we've had to be very creative in how do we sustain making this work? Because it's not just the technology. The technology is a big piece, but the biggest piece is that we actually need people in cities all across the country to build these networks, these care sharing networks of churches and businesses and individuals and agencies and schools and all the people who need to know, wow, here is a platform that we can all jump on together. It's a lot of work. And so our funding model is a combo of public and private. And what I mean by that is we largely work with child welfare agencies that are state-run. They are all over the country, and they have a tremendous return on investment when they use CarePortal. It's a no-brainer financially for them to have off-budget resources and community supports that come to serve the families. And so we have agreements with them that are some are small and some are humongous, and they go from one county to a whole statewide in some states. And that's a big part of our revenue. And the other side is philanthropy. That's the private side. And so we have grants and foundations and private investors who say, I want this to flourish in my city, and so I'm willing to get behind it financially to make it happen. And the combination of those two things is what sustains the work that we're doing and helps us grow.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And you can learn about all of that and more at careportal.org. I want to give you the last word here of what are you hoping somebody listening to us, how do you hope that they will respond? They for the first time, they heard the term CarePortal. Yeah. And what would be your dream tonight that person takes away from this conversation and does next?
The simplest thing, Mark, is download the app. If I say just do one thing, just download the CarePortal app and start looking for needs in your own community where you live. Do that. Do what you just did, Mark. Like, you're engaging as an individual, and that is the lowest barrier of entry. But if you're caught by the vision, you look on there, you start to see some needs, and you're part of a church, well, talk to the missions or outreach pastor, or whoever the leadership is, and say, is this something that we could do? And lean into how you might mobilize more people at your church to take that action. And if you have a business, man, we have so many stories of people engaging their business to have a tangible way to really do community support from their office. And if you work in an agency and you're like, I wish I had connections to churches and people who want to help, well, you just go to the website and there's an easy path for you to enroll your agency. The opportunity here is such a low barrier to get started, and downloading the app is the simplest thing for somebody to do.
Yeah, and I can speak from personal experience. You can sit down while you're watching your favorite baseball or football game and play around on the app. You can put in whatever metrics you want. Hey, I want to know about this zip code, or I want to know about this county, and you'll see real needs that come up, and you'll see that there's simple descriptions of, hey, this person needs a few dollars to repair their car, or they need a baby stroller, or they need some diapers. I mean, it can be a full range of things. And the great thing about CarePortal is it aligns all the people that are involved in this process so that everybody sees how it's coming together. And a lot of times we all get all kinds of requests to help from one thing to another. Most of the time it's just, hey, give us your credit card number and a few dollars, and you don't see anything else that comes out of that. But CarePortal can make this really, really come alive. And so we would just together plead with our audience to just check this out. Go get the app, spend a few minutes on your computer looking at careportal.org. And if God puts it in your heart, then move forward with it individually, move forward with it as a small group leader or as a church leader in some way. I think you'll be very, very impressed with what this tool can do to help really transform people's lives and transform your life in the process. Adrien, thank you. It's been a joy to get to talk with you today and to learn more about Adrien, about you and about CarePortal. And again, that website is careportal.org. The app is just CarePortal, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Mark, thank you so much. I mean, really, this has been a huge honor for us to be part of your ministry. You're doing a lot of great work in the country, and we're glad to be part of it.
Well, I'm glad our mutual friend Jim connected us, and we won't pat him on the back too much, but we will say thank you to Jim for putting us together. And as we always do at Denison Forum, we hope that if you have a question or a comment that you'd like to share with us, you can do that at info@denisonforum.org. And you can find other resources in addition to this podcast. If you're looking for ways to help make a difference in your world, check us out at denisonforum.org. And we'll see you next time on the Faith and Clarity podcast.